Hi, and welcome to the Wednesday Word. It was one of the hottest days of the dry season. We hadn't seen rain in almost a month. The crops were dying. The cows had stopped giving milk. The creeks and streams were long gone back into the earth. It was a dry season that would bankrupt several farmers before it was through. Every day, my husband and his brothers would go about the process of trying to get water to the fields. Lately, this process had involved taking a truck to the local water plant and filling it up with water. But severe rationing had cut everyone off. If we didn't see some rain soon, we would lose everything. It was on this day that I learned the true lesson of sharing and witnessed a miracle with my own eyes. I was in the kitchen making lunch for my husband and his brothers when I saw my 6-year-old son, Billy, walking toward the woods. He wasn't walking with the usual carefree abandon of a youth, but with a serious purpose. I could only see his back. He was obviously walking with a great effort, trying to be as still as possible. Minutes after he disappeared into the woods, he came running out again toward the house. I went back to making sandwiches, thinking that whatever task he had been doing was completed. A short time later, however, he was once again walking in that slow, purposeful stride toward the woods. This activity went on for an hour, walking carefully to the woods, running back to the house. Finally, I couldn't take it any longer, and I crept out of the house and followed him on his journey, being careful not to be seen, as he was obviously doing important work and didn't need his mother checking up on him. He was cupping both hands in front of him as he walked, being very careful not to spill the water he held in them, maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons in his tiny hands. I crept close to him as the branches and thorns slapped his little face, but he just ignored them. As I leaned in to spy on him, I saw the most amazing sight. Several large deer stood in front of him. Billy walked right up to them. I almost screamed for him to get away. A huge buck with enormous antlers was dangerously close. But the buck did not threaten him. He didn't even move as Billy knelt down. Then I saw a tiny fawn laying on the ground, obviously suffering from dehydration and heat exhaustion. It lifted its head with great effort to lap up the water that was cupped in my little boy's hands. When the water was gone, Billy jumped up to run back to the house, and I hid behind a tree. I followed him back to the side of the house where there was a spigot. We had shut off the water because of the drought. Billy opened it all the way up, and a small trickle began to creep out. He knelt there, letting the drip, drip slowly fill up his makeshift cup as the sun beat down on his little back. Billy had gotten into trouble for playing with the hose the week before. He had received a lecture about the importance of not wasting water. It took several minutes for the drops to fill his hands. When he stood up and began the trek back, I was there in front of him. His little eyes just filled with tears. "I'm not wasting," was all he said. As he began his walk, I joined him with a small pot of water from the kitchen. I let him tend to the fawn. I stayed away. It was his job. I stood on the edge of the woods, watching as he worked so hard to save the fawn's life. As the tears that rolled down my face began to hit the ground, other drops and more suddenly joined them. I looked up at the sky. It was as if God himself was weeping. Some will probably say that this was all just a huge coincidence. Those miracles don't really exist. It was bound to rain sometime. And I can't argue with that. I'm not going to try. All I can say is that the rain that day saved our farm, just like the actions of one little boy save that fawn's life. Sometimes it may only take a little to make a big difference. Have a good week.